Interview 62, Steven Leapley.
Of course, you know, Chief was a really, really, really good salesman. So he was like, well, I'll tell you what we can do. I'm like, you ever thought about being a corpsman? I'm like, what's that? He's like, it's like a doctor. It's like, you're not a doctor. And one of my copywriting clients, you know, about 4 years ago, she was like, can you edit my book for me? And I said, sure. And so edited her book. We sent it off. She sent it off to her publisher, and she came back. She's like, I got good news and bad news.
Let's go. You're listening to Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran Podcast.
Now introducing your host of Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran, the one-man show, Brian Roof.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning into Every Day's a Saturday. I am so happy you guys are here today, and I'm excited for my next guest. My next guest, his name is Steven Leapley. He served his country proud in the United States Navy, and he's going to tell us all about his life and all about himself. Let's go ahead and meet Steven Leapley. What's going on, man?
How you doing, my friend?
I can't complain, bro. I like that little like
it's my Uncle Rico.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's a good look, bro. We should take a little snippet of that one. I think that's a poster.
I was actually at Costco the other day, and I had to get a new membership card, and I was really upset about it. Anyway,
right?
That's another story. And
you got to sit in the damn line.
Yeah, and so
yeah,
I was like, "Can I do a Napoleon Dynamite pose?" And she's like, "You can do whatever you want." So I was like, so that's what my card looks like. I'm like, yes, if I can.
There it is, bro. That's your new look now. I mean, and when you go do your driver's license, they probably won't let you get away with that. But you should try.
You know what they do is like between like 25 and 70, they don't change your picture. In California, I've like, because I'm a little older than 25,
right? and, you know, I now that you say that, yeah, you're right, bro. But that's okay, you know, because I think my picture's definitely missing all this white stuff, you know, and I can appreciate that.
I think mine actually has me clean shaven with a little bit of a mohawk. I used to call it my mogwai because it was like this big and just at the top. So
it almost sounds like a good old high and tight, damn near the old school high and tights where the guys barely had that little piece, you know. I don't know if you guys you know, been around enough them jarheads over there.
I have definitely.
So hey, bro, let's go ahead and get to know a little bit about you, dude. You spent over 10 years in the Navy. You got 16 years as a paramedic. You're a dad to 8. There's a lot going on with you, man. So let's kind of run through it all, man. Tell us where you grew up. What made you decide to be a squid? And let's hear it all.
Well, you'll appreciate this story, Brian. So I actually grew up in the Midwest. So I call Chicago, the suburbs of Chicago, my home. Because that's where I was from like 4th grade to high school.
Right.
Prior to that, I was born in Ohio. Then we went from Ohio to Indiana to Michigan to Illinois. So literally, I grew up in the Midwest. And so I actually, when I got out of high school, I went to college for a semester, and I was like, this is stupid. This is like high school with smoke breaks, and I didn't smoke, so it wasn't cool. You know, I was like, I just don't care. So I was like, you know what, my uncle was a Marine, and he was my hero growing up. So you remember, you know, used to get the after boot camp, you get the you know, our books that we would get with,
right. Yep.
And he went through in the 70s. So it was when they used to have like the color photos, the standard stock photos that they have, and all of the photos from his company or his platoon, all in one book, but those were in black and white. And so I would take this thing and I would carry it around with me. Like I was 13 and I would try to emulate an O course in the back of my, in my backyard, just because I wanted to be like him so bad. Nice. And so when it came time, I was in a place where I was like, I want to do something different. He was a recruiter in Detroit. And so we were talking about what it would look like. I was like, that would be so cool if you could like, that's, you know, like a dream come true. And so we started to work on it. And at the last second, the staff sergeant in Chicago was like, sorry, your uncle's not going to get credit. I'm going to get credit. He's not going to have anything to do with this, you know. And it was, you know, and we had worked out all of the, you know, because that was still that was 1990. That was still back in the day where, you know, like it was a used car salesman. Like you had to hit your quotas, or you know,
right.
court martial.
Useless.
Like,
yeah.
So at that point, when that happened, I was so mad, because like he's the only person that's ever been on a pedestal for me, like that high of a pedestal. And so I stormed around. I'm like, well, fine, I'm not joining. And he's like, you can't do that. I'm like, I haven't signed anything. Screw you. I'm out of here. And so I walked out, and I didn't want to join the Navy because my dad was in the Navy. And it's not that we had a bad relationship or anything. I was like, I just don't want that. And I was like, I'm too smart to be in the Army, and I'm too active to be in the Air Force. That was my what's up to do? So all my Army and Air Force buddies out there. So I was like, so I walked to the recruiting office, and I was like, what do you have for me? And I was like, and don't lie to me, because my dad was in the Navy, and he tells me how you guys all lie and, you know, try to sell me something that I don't want. I'm going to get what I want, or I'm out of here. And he's like, whoa, it's okay. It's okay. And so I wanted to be a radio disc jockey. And at that time, and you know, it was like, you know, that's circa Good Morning Vietnam, right? And like, and so I was like, that's what I want to do. And they're like, well, like you could be a radio man, but there's really nothing, like, you know, we don't really have a radio station. Like you could, you know, be on ships. And like they were really straightforward with me. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm out. Like, I can't do it. And the chief in there at the time was like, come in here, come sit down with me. And I'm like, don't try to sell me anything, buddy. And he's like, no, I just want to make sure that if you walk out of here, we've done our due diligence. He's like, so tell me what brought you in here. So I told him the story of the Marine, of being across the hall at the Marine guy. And of course, you know, Chief was a really, really, really good salesman. So he was like, well, I'll tell you what we can do. I'm like, you ever thought about being a corpsman? I'm like, what's that? He's like, it's like a doctor. It's like, you're not a doctor, but you're like a doctor. I'm like, actually, like, yeah, like that would be really rad to be a doctor. And he's like, so if you become a corpsman, you can do one of two things. You can either go and be on a ship, or you can go with the Marines, because the Marines are actually a department of the, you know, blah, 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 blah. So me on. He's like, and you could get stationed with your uncle. So better than having him swear you in, you could actually work alongside of your uncle. And I was like, I'm in. Like, that's like, hook, line, and sinker. I was in. And spent 10 and a half years in, never once got stationed with my uncle.
Oh, that's crazy.
The only time I got orders to Okinawa, he got orders back to Camp Lejeune. So I was like,
oh man, that's crazy.
And so I was like, okay, well, I tried. So that was me getting in. And then I get in, and of course, in Chicago, you know, like they try to send you to boot camp that's closest to you, right? So thankfully I was in Chicago, so I went to boot camp at Great Lakes in Chicago. Then Corps School at the time was in Chicago. It was in Chicago and San Diego. And so since I was already there in Chicago, I just stayed in Chicago. And then my first duty station was Great Lakes. So for me, it was join the Navy, see Great Lakes for 2 years.
Now, were you on the blue side when you went in, or on the green side now?
I went in on the blue side.
Okay.
So I was there, and then I stayed pretty much blue side most of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's like, you know, there's always that, you know, blue side, green side, if you're a real corpsman kind of thing. But I spent enough time with special forces not forward
I've had
deployed, but
both.
just,
I've had both on the show. So I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely. And I know that in some terms, I know that sometimes some of you guys want to stay or want to be on one side or the other and want to stay there. Because I did hear too that they do rotations and try to make you go so you have the best. You do both worlds.
yeah. And really it's shore duty, sea duty. And so either, and your sea duty is either on a boat at a,
Mhm.
at a foreign station or with the Marines. So
Okay.
that's considered your sea duty. And so it was, and, but the cool thing was like, with having Pendleton out here or even Naval Station down in San Diego, like you could literally
Coronado Bay.
stay your whole career on one base and just go back and forth from being a deployed unit to a shore duty billet, but I spent 2 years in Chicago and then took off to Guam for 3 years. And that was really cool. I mean, that was 19, 20, 21, 1920, yeah, 1920, 19, 20, 21, or 2021, 22, right in there. And so that was like college days for me. That was,
Yeah.
to be forward deployed, overseas, in a really cool place. I mean, Guam is
What
kind of
was
like,
the year you joined?
I joined in 1990.
Okay, 1990. Okay.
I came in 90. So I was actually in training when the Gulf War started. And I remember like the somberness that came with that, like when the first when the first missiles were launched off the Missouri, like they turned on the military TV and showed us the thing and they're like, okay, all right, so this is where shit gets real. And the whole attitude around how we trained and shifted from more of them, less of them being jerks and trying to push that kind of style, and more of like, okay, we need to prep you for war because we don't know what's going to happen,
Right.
kind of thing. And so
You guys probably had to deal with a lot of guys coming back that, dealt with combat and, coming back with all different sorts of ailments and issues. Something that we probably hadn't really kind of done in a while, in the military, because there's always there's those peace times and there's the wartime, and you kind of, have those different peaks and valleys, so to speak.
yeah,
So, it's kind of an interesting time when you went in because you're going in, and now when guys are coming back, they're, got injuries, not only just physically, but mentally as well.
yeah, which I know we'll get into a little bit later, but that's one reason why I do what I do now. So, but we'll circle back to that one in a little bit.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I spent 3 years on Guam and got married there, and to a beautiful Air Force lady, and then a year later got divorced.
The Navy way,
So,
right? I mean, the
Navy way.
military way, actually, shoot.
Exactly. So, sorry about that. My light just went down.
No, you're good, man.
There we go. Okay. It's stormy season here.
Looked like
So
you went like into an interrogation room all of a sudden.
So next, what I did.
Yeah, right. Tell me about it.
So I could, it's classified. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. And so, excuse me. So my 3 years on Guam was like, that was probably some of the best time for me militarily. Just the experience I had, the exposure I had, as a corpsman, it was cool dealing with the patients. I literally had a surreal bar fight experience. We were, it was my first, like, I think it was like 3 weeks on the island, and my buddies and I were at a bar, and we had just gotten off. And so I was still in our tropical white. So we had shorts, that was cool to be able to wear shorts. But
yeah, no kidding, man.
we're sitting at the bar drinking, and lo and behold, there was a Marine unit on there, and a classic. It literally was like a scene out of a movie. It was a classic, Marine Navy fight, right? And so, but you're kind of like, what side do I fight on? Like, You know, like this is
Like if I
and
go and punch this Marine, I might be seeing him as a patient.
right. And my buddy literally says to me, he goes, just sit here. Just sit here and drink your beer. And I was like, and I'm looking at him, he's like, trust me, just sit here and drink your beer. And I was like, okay. And so we're sitting there and it's a little fight's going on behind us. And he's just like looking at me in the eye and he's trying to keep my attention on him. He's like, this happens all the time in this bar. And so we sat there and, 10 minutes later, it finally like subsides, over stupidity. And he turns around and he's like, all right, now we have to go help these guys. So, and it was crazy because like that was like my first real experience of like hearing the stories of the Marines and Navy. I'm like, this is
you were living like a typical Navy life right there, bro. Like, it's a lot. It's not. I don't think you were in the Navy if you didn't get in a bar fight. Same thing with the Marines. It's like one of those things.
Yep. Yeah. You just at some point you have to get into a fight. You just got to do it. It's important.
Thing. Yeah.
It just is. It's like, it's like becoming a shellback, it's like you have to, it's rite of passage. That's what it is. Rite of passage. All right.
Requirements.
There we go.
There you go.
And so, so left there and went to Northern California, to a base called Mare Island, which was up in the back of the San Francisco Bay. And that was really cool too, because that was a nuclear submarine shipyard.
Oh,
and so,
nice.
So we got, we had top secret clearance, and it was really cool. It was sad because that base had got put on in 92, got back the base realignment and closure thing that happened. And so in 95, 96 it was slated to be closed. And so I got there at the end of 95 or mid 95, I think. And I was like so much rich history on that base. Like that was the first Navy hospital on the West Coast, and the shovel groundbreaking was done by Abraham Lincoln in 1861 or something like that too. Like those was like really, really cool. Lots of history, lots of really like the commanding officer's house was like a plantation house in Georgia. Like it was just huge. That's where I began to learn about all the intricacies of nuclear weapons too. Like my first question was like, why do we have cows on a base? Like this makes no sense. There's like 150 herd of cattle on the base. And it was like, well, in the event of a nuclear leak, one of the first things that happens is cows will fall over dead. And I was like, good point.
The whole parrot, the whole parrot thing, huh?
Yeah. And so that was kind of cool. Like it's so every morning we would drive around base and we're like, are the cows still alive? And that was really, I mean, they'd film some movies on there. For me, it was really cool because there was a shell of a ship. So on one end, they had a couple of old DDGs from the Vietnam era that were all stripped down and taken apart, where they like sunk half of it, and there was a couple of like just base frames that they had right underneath the water there. You could see when you went, there's a bridge. So when you drive over the bridge, you could see like just some of the shells of old ships. And come to find out, one of them was my dad's old ship when it was after it got decommissioned. And so that was really cool to like have a piece of my dad, his Navy history and my Navy history kind of together at one base. That was really cool.
That is awesome.
And then I ended up coming down to San Diego, and it was one of those times I had orders to Bethesda, and I had orders to San Diego. I could there's your two choices, and I hated the fact of coming to San Diego because I grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up pretty like conservative, and California was just fruity and nutty. That's what I grew up like, especially Southern California. If you go to Southern California, like, bro, just be prepared you know, and so I'm like, I avoided San Diego like the plague as long as I could. And, but alas, I was, you know, dating some chick. And so I was like, you know, the 7-hour drive from San Diego to Sacramento is, you know, is a lot less than, you know, a cross country drive. So I'm like, I'll go to San Diego, you know, and of course, you know, 2 months after I got here, we break up. So, but then a year later I met, yeah, right. So then a year later I met my wife, and
Good.
she's San Diego native here. And so we got married, and we've been married 25 years. And we've done some traveling around, but so she got like the last few years of my military career. And then I ended up, we had 3-year orders to Okinawa. And then we just had our first child, and she was dealing with some postpartum. And of course that was back in the time when Okinawa was like, oh, we can't handle spouses with postpartum. That's, you know, and in typical Navy fashion, they were like, oh, well, if you can't go 3 years accompanied with your spouse, then we're just going to send you 1 year unaccompanied by yourself. You know, like, right. So that caused some challenges. I go to check in, you know, it's like 24 hours before I'm supposed to leave to go to Okinawa. And of course, from the Marines, every time you go to a new duty station, you know, you have to go through your weigh-ins, make sure everything's good. You know, you hear all your orders, I go get my weigh-in done, and I'm a half a pound overweight out of rigs. And that was during the time, that was still like late 90s, where, you know, they were pretty strict. Like, it didn't matter what the reason was. If you were,
right,
you know, if you're out of standard, you're out of standards. And so they were like literally pulled my orders on a Friday morning. I sat in the building until like 6 o'clock Friday night. And they're like, okay, Monday you have to check in at Balboa. Like, you know, we pulled your orders, you know, we'll figure out what's going on. They'll figure it out when you get down there, but you need to check into Balboa. So I go down to Balboa and check in, and they're like, okay, like, we got to, you know, first thing you do is check your weight and verify all that stuff. And I'm 3 pounds underweight when I check in on. So I was like, it was, for me, it kind of felt like a divine intervention almost. And so I ended up staying in San Diego for the rest of my career, which set me up to get into paramedicine and work in the civilian sector for a while. And so that's essentially, like, in a nutshell, my military days. Nothing
nice.
You know, and it was weird because, you know, I don't know how long you spent in, Brian, but like, for a while after you get out, things start to happen, you know, like different conflicts come up, and you're like, you don't, like, you know, it's not like I was an electrician on a boat, you know, it's like,
right,
you know, like, you know, there's something different about being a corpsman, you know, and than most other rates, I feel like. And there was a few years where I was like really like bummed that I wasn't in a position where I could get forward deployed and, you know, be on the front lines and taking care of the guys. And I had dealt with that for a long time. And then at one point I just kind of let it go. And I was like, you know what, I'm actually kind of grateful that I had the career that I had, you know, and because I don't deal with some of the PTSD that some of the other guys have to deal with.
Right.
And you know, it's like I would definitely not change that for anything. It is like pouring down rain out here.
Yeah, man, we've been getting a lot too. It's unreal.
Like I'm looking. I feel like I'm in Guam right now. My trees are like bending over.
Yeah, it's been crazy, bro. This is some really crazy weather we've had here in California. It's unreal.
Wow,
man. Yeah, it is.
Wow,
definitely blowing it.
So, one of my favorite, I will tell you, is one of my favorite stories about being in was when I was up in Mare Island. It was right around the time where women had already been, you know, on ships and they're integrating, you know, males and females more. And I was sitting for a sailor of the quarterboard, and that was right at the time when they were considering putting women into combat, and so that was the hot topic. And and I remember sitting down with my chief. He's like, "You're going to get the question when you go sit down, and you're going to have to answer it appropriately." I'm like, "What's the answer, chief?" He's like, "I can't give you the answer. Have to. That's 100% on you." And I was like, "Okay." And so I was, trying to formulate an answer the night before and what I was going to say, and I had decided when that question comes the next day, I'm just going to say the first thing that comes to my mind, because I figured that'll be the most honest and authentic thing that I could do. And and so we sat there, and of course the question comes. It's one of the last questions. It was old salty E9 Master Chief sitting there, and he's like, "What are you gonna? I got one question for you, Petty Officer Leapley." And I'm like, "Okay," and he's like, "What's your view on women in combat?" And I was like, "Oh, there it is. There's the question." And so took a deep breath, and I said, "Well, Master Chief, I think women in combat are a good thing." And he goes, and he's leaning in, and he's stroking his mustache, and he's like, "Oh, where are you going with this, son? Like, this is not a good thing." And I said, "Master Chief, the more women we send into combat, the less chance I have of going into combat." and that was the response. They all just busted up laughing, and they're like, "That is the best answer we've had, bar none, all day." And it was like, I'm like, "Well, it's true." I'm like, my job is to go into, at the time, like, my job is to go into combat, right? That was what we get. That was the job.
I'm really shocked that they even gave you guys like an opinion, to be honest with you, in regards to that, and even asked. I guess they were just trying to get a little bit of a feel of where everybody was at with it, and trying to get a little bit of a understanding of how people are going to react.
Yeah. And so for me, it was kind of it's just the first thing that came to my mind. Like, I don't want to go die.
Right.
And that became like the talk of the town for the longest time. So that was a fun piece of my career.
That's awesome.
So
now, now you get out, you did 11 years, right?
Just about 10 and a half. Yeah.
10 and a half years. Obviously getting out and transitioning out, it's got to be hard. I know for 4 years it was kind of hard, and I know a lot of people don't do very well when they get out, and because there's no school or class on how to get out and what to do when you get out, and you feel this or you feel that, what to do. So for you, what did you do, and what was your next step?
I had an easy transition. I really did. Like, I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, and they're like, "Wow, like there's not very many stories of super easy transitions especially for enlisted guys."
Yeah.
And so because I had built up the network that I had, and my last assignment was running the emergency room, running the 911 system there. And the Navy had decided to take away corpsmen being EMTs and replacing them with federal fire department. So I oversaw that whole transition, and because of that, we had to work with the county on a bunch of projects, and so I got to know the county government pretty well, and they had an opening to basically do what I was doing. It was some teaching, training, and regulation for the county, and so I interviewed for that, and it was just beautiful. It was like a super easy transition. For me, it was, $50,000 pay raise, and I get to be home on weekends. And I was like, yeah, I'll take this job.
Hell yeah.
You don't have to tell me twice. Well, I got out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got out July 7th of 2001. And then And then when I got out, I was like, you know what? I don't want to waste that time in the military. So I joined the reserves and got stationed with a tank battalion here in San Diego before the Marines got rid of tanks. And I went to one drill in August, and I was like, this is stupid. Like,
right before September 11th, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, the month before.
So I was like, this is really stupid. Like you guys don't care. It's not that they don't care, but they just didn't care because it was a complete reserve unit. Nobody had been active duty before,
right.
and nor had they been activated. And so it was kind of a shit show. And so because I was kind of in that 30-day process, I talked to the gunny there, and I was like, I really don't want to do this, gunny. And he was like, you know what? He goes, all right. He goes, well, we can get you out. He goes, if you don't want to do it, we can get you out because you did 10 years, like I'll help you get out, And so he got me out. My official release date was September 4th, 2001.
Wow. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Literally a week prior.
Yeah.
To the bombing. I mean, the trade center stuff.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And so that was a crazy, a kind of a crazy spin in life there.
Because things could have went a little bit different had you still been in right there. Right.
Well,
I mean,
a few months after, my wife gets a call, from, and some chief was like, your husband needs to report back to, report back here because we need corpsman, and he's a corpsman, and she called me freaking out like, you have to go, they're sending you away. And I'm like, and she was pregnant with our second at that time, and I was like, no, I don't. And so I called the chief, and he was like, you need to report. You have 24 hours to report. I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, son, have you ever heard of the IRR? I was like,
oh shit,
Chief, did you even look at my record, Chief? I'm like, he's like, he goes, your ass is ours for 8 years. I'm like, Chief, I did 10 and a half. I'm like, your ass is mine.
Yeah, you're done.
And he was like, well, I was like, yeah. I'm like, there's only two ways I'm coming back in. I'm like, either my wife says yes, or the president signs something that I have to come back in. And I said, and neither one of those two are happening anytime soon. So don't ever call here again. And I'm glad I made that choice, because I would have been, because I think then, the tank battalion was still there. I think it got activated.
You definitely would have went the green side that time, and imagine because they weren't, probably taking too many on the blue side. They probably needed more people to go on the green side. So
yeah. And so
definitely,
that was,
that could have been a whole different trajectory for your life.
Yep. I would not be where I'm at today. Definitely, I'm pretty certain I wouldn't be married. And I know for a fact that, so I had my first wife, which lovingly my wife calls it my first deployment. She's like, I hate the ex-wife, the term ex-wife. She's like, we'll just call it your first deployment. So
I like that.
No, it's like, so I have my oldest daughter is from my first deployment, and then my wife and I have 7.
You so popped them right on out, man. Afterwards, like
we did, we had 3 in 3 years, and then like every 4 years we had another one. I've come to the conclusion that God gives you the amount of kids that you need to get your head out of your butt. It just took me a little bit longer to get my head out of my butt. So
I see that. Yeah, it's all good though. Hey, man, kids are I got 6 myself. 3 are step and 3 are my own, but they, they're blessings.
Yeah, they
are.
they all have a different piece of your personality.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, right.
So
good, bad, and
indifferent.
Yep. Whatever.
100%. So and then that's kind of where, after I got out, did a few different jobs, went back to college, had a nice, I got out of the medical field, had a nervous breakdown, and I was, watching all my friends when they turned 30 have these nervous breakdowns, and I'm like, that's never going to happen to me. And so I just waited till I was 33. So I tell everybody, like, I waited
Dang, dude.
3 more
Yeah,
years.
to finally hit you. Yeah, I mean, because you probably seen a lot at this point in time, and as when you got out on the civilian side, I'm sure it got even uglier,
There was,
right?
I mean, yeah, I've had some really hellacious, medic calls, both military and civilian wise, and so yeah, there's a few that reeked on me for a while, and so that really like set me kind of off the deep end. So I I decided to get out of the medical field and use my skills and transition into corporate training, because I had done a lot of curriculum writing for the Navy and EMT classes and such, and so that was which was a lot of fun. So to me, it was a natural transition. I did that until the economy crashed in 2008-9. Ended up going back to school for 4 years. Got my associates, my bachelor's, my master's, and then went in to do some consulting work and kind of worked for a couple of different companies. And then in 2017, my wife and I, well, in that year ended up moving 3 times. The first one was by choice of just, we wanted something different. So we moved there, and then the house that we moved into flooded. And the landlord there was just really nuts about it. And so we're like, we're out. So we moved to another house. Same thing. It was like the torrential rains that we're getting now. It was like, and that was like, that
As it
flooded our
kicks up,
house.
he's like on cue, like the torrential rains, and you can hear in the background starting to kick up.
Yeah, starting now. It did.
Cue the rain. Cue the rain.
It did. It literally just started pouring again.
Yeah, I heard it right after you said that. No kidding.
And so that's awesome. And so it flooded our house, flooded the second house we were in, and those landlords tried to blame us for it. And they pulled some walls, some boards off the wall, the drywall back, and there was like 30 feet of black mold, like 6 feet high across.
Oh shit!
And I'm like, and we'd only been there just less than a year, and I was like, I'm not a contractor, but I'm pretty sure it takes more than a year to get that much black mold going on there, and so my wife was like, can we just, and we've done some traveling before that in an RV from time to time. So she's like, can we just get an RV and go move full time into it? And I was like, I'm starting to have epileptic seizures. I'm like, no.
I'm like, what?
No. And she's
no
like,
space?
yeah. I'm like, give up my office again? Like no. And so through many conversations, we compromised, and I'm like, okay, we can do it, but we have to get a big one, and it has to have slide outs, and it has to be, new. And so that's what we did. And we've been living full time in it since 2017.
Wow.
And
nice.
yeah, so
7 years, huh? Sheesh.
We've done a cross country trip in it. Some other, statewide trips and such, and we ended up on a couple different plots of private land we ended up on a really cool private land, and our plan was to stay there 3 months. And as we were gearing up to take off again is when 2020 happened, shut everything down. And so we're like, well, we'll just stay here for a little bit. And then we jumped back in the road on last year and a half ago. We kind of jumped back out for a little while. And then we stumbled across this place in Fallbrook. And so I'm on the top of the hill, got 20 acres, and my wife wanted to start a farm. And so we now have a farm, got cows and goats and chickens and turkeys and fruit trees and garden. And so it's
So, damn, dude, where was your experience with all that? Or now you're just learning on the fly? Is it like a trial by error, and you're like, or is it you got that green thumb?
My wife definitely has the green thumb.
The wife, yeah.
So she does a lot of, I end up building everything. And so that's
yeah.
And so
You become a CB now, bro. Navy CB
right.
now.
That's right. I feel like I have since we moved into the trailer. I had to learn, like I was a corpsman. Like if your life is in danger, I got you. If anything else is in danger, don't call me.
Damn, dude, you should have connected with some Navy CBs and had a whole team come over. Like, hey, bro, I need this build up.
Right.
Like, done.
I should have. And so when we went full time, like I had to have a job where it was flexible enough for me to go and move. And so that's when I transitioned into, I was doing copywriting, and had a couple accounts. And so I started copywriting, and that was a lot of fun. And, a lot of that, so I had a couple of clients at the time that were, I was essentially, their social media manager. And
so kind of run us through what that entails. Yeah. I mean, I'm interested.
Basically just creating content for other people, and,
okay.
And, aligning it to their vision and their kind of personality, and which is a lot of fun. Just learning about someone. And I think in my background as being a paramedic, and then my master's degree is in psychology, counseling psychology. So it's kind of a cool fit for me, because I was able to kind of, I can, when you're a medic and you're in the field, you kind of have like 30 seconds to make a character call on someone. Is the scene safe? Are they drunk? Are they high? Like there's all these things that go through your head that you have to do. And so over, 16 years, I got really good at kind of, picking out and deciphering character traits of people pretty quickly. And so that experience has served me real well, to be able to sit down with someone and they say, I need content around, XYZ. And then I'm just like, sweet. So I can ask a few questions and really kind of figure out, their take on it. And then just, I cut my teeth on ghostwriting when my wife and I were in class. She would come to me and ask me to edit her papers, which is, was just one of the skills I had. And so, this one time she comes and she's like, here's a paper, I just need you to edit it. And it was like 4.5 pages. And I said, how long is it supposed to be? She's like 10. And I'm like, you need to write more. She's like, I'm done. And I'm like, no, like literally, like I can edit it, but like you need to write more. She's like, nope, I'm done. I'm like, you can't turn in a 4-page paper to this professor. I know who this professor is. Like it's got to be exactly like to the T10. And she's like, well, why don't you do it? And I was like, challenge accepted. And so that was kind of where
she won that one.
She did. She did win that
challenge on. You're like, I got this.
You're like, it's like a man. You don't drop a bet in front of a man. You don't take it. Like you can't.
Right? She knew how to get that paper done.
Yes, she did. And so I got really good at writing and helping her write, a few pages here and there on every paper, in her tone and in her voice, because I couldn't write it the way I would, because I'm so much more analytical. She's super conversational, so her papers sounded the way she talked. And so I just got really good at taking her conversations and helping, and writing it in that fashion,
elaborating more. And
yeah. And so on one of my copywriting clients, about 4 years ago, she was like, can you edit my book for me? And I said, sure. And so edited her book. We sent it off. She sent it off to her publisher, and she came back. She's like, I got good news and bad news. She's like, good news, they love the book. We need to write more. We actually need to like double the book. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, do you want my help, like doing some ghostwriting with that? She's like, yes. She goes, that's the bad news. The bad news is we have 96 hours to have it done. And so,
shoot, man, dang.
Yeah,
it's crunch time.
And so that was like my throw me in the fire moment of ghostwriting. And so I'd worked with her for probably about 6 months. So I kind of,
So you nailed it. You nailed the first opportunity. Did you nail it? You got that 96 hours done?
We did.
Nice.
We got it done. And so since then, with her, we've done 2 books, and we now launched a magazine that I'm the managing editor for. And so,
Wow.
so which is really rad. It's really rad. And so in that,
so tell us what the book names are, and tell us the magazine. Give us some names, man.
It's all
plugging away.
So it's her name is Lori McNeil. And so the first book we wrote was called Media Secrets. And then the second book was called Legacy Unlocked. And then the magazine is called Legacy Unlimited. So she's a business coach, business strategist, but her angle is teaching legacy, teaching people how to create legacy in their life and business, more than just, putting a name on a brick on a building kind of thing. Like,
right.
And so she kind of worked into that niche, some years back. And so that's what we do. And then in doing that, I had a couple other people ask for some books, and I've kind of switched in the last 14 months, really shifted into almost solely doing ghostwriting. So I still write blogs and articles for people, and some special projects off and on, that I want to take on that are fun and exciting for me to do. I did a proposal for a guy for a podcast so he could get corporate sponsorships, and so some of those things, and I really kind of fell in love with the ghostwriting piece of it, and in figuring out, for the first 4 or 5 months it was really kind of hard to figure it out, because I'm all over the place, because I have all this experience and I have all these different avenues that I've traveled down, but as I was walking through, one of the coaches I had at the time was walking through this clarity exercise about the things that I've done, and entrepreneurs, emergency medical services, military, like all these things are kind of intertwined. And so I really kind of just sat with it for a little bit. I just fell in love with it's time for me to really kind of help give back to the veteran community. And so that's so my shift has become, or primarily the people I work with are vets. And I wrote an ebook called Unheard Valor, which is why every veteran should write their book. And it was really cool. And that came out of a conversation, because a lot of people will write their books. Entrepreneurs will write their books or write their stories, that help them with their business. It's like, the rags to riches kind of story, or the trauma to triumph kind of story. And now they're a life coach, or, a relationship coach or something. And so they use that to better themselves and to better their business. So I've done a handful of those kind of projects, which are great. I've done a couple. So do you know who Jocko Willink is?
Yeah.
So he wrote Extreme Ownership. I didn't help him write that book.
Jocko, he's pretty popular in the podcast world. And in the veteran podcast world, I do know he's one of the top.
And so his book is kind of the model almost that a lot of people use, where they take their stories and they put them into kind of leadership or character or integrity or something that relates to what they're doing, and kind of roll with that. And so I did that for a couple of vet friends of mine that were ex-Navy SEALs. One of them was a prior Navy SEAL, prior paramedic and firefighter. And so in talking to him, he was like, as we're walking through his project, he's like, writing the story out has been more helpful for me in dealing with my PTSD than all of the years of therapy I'd done. Because there's something about when we journal, right, and we write and we get those stories out, that just we're not sitting behind, you're not having somebody say, tell me, how does that make you feel? How did you feel?
Right.
How did you feel when the enemy was taking a knife and shoving it into your side? Felt pretty shitty, actually. It's like like,
Oh,
you
shit.
know, it's like, it wasn't a walk in the park, but, you know, like, and so it's, you know, so there's something cathartic about writing and getting it out. And so, so that was like the real big tug on me as being a veteran to like, yeah, like, let's tell our stories. I've got a guy that I'm writing with who his whole goal in writing his book is to tell his life story and give it to his grandkids. Like, literally, he wants 10 copies for his 10 grandkids, and that's it. And so, like, that's really cool, you know, and it's,
It
and so
is,
it,
man. And what I can appreciate about this too is there's so many stories to be heard,
yeah,
from the veteran community that just go left unheard, bro, because, if they don't make the movie or something like that, but believe you me, even guys that even go in combat, they got some great stories just through training. If you served, you have great stories. I don't care. That's the way I always look at it in terms of my podcast is there's no story that's lame to me. Like, I mean, if you served, you have great stories. There's jokes. You
yep.
have training exercises. There's just so many things that go on during that
I
time.
could, I could write a book about my season with the strip clubs, like, you know,
Right?
like,
You know what I mean? Like, first, when we all go to school, I think everybody starts off and they learn about strip clubs right off rip.
I was laughing about so because like literally like my introduction to a strip club again in the 90s because I had, you know, my buddy's like, we're gonna go to the strip club. I'm like, you guys go, I'm gonna stay here at the bar. He's like, no, 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 you gotta come with us. I'm like, no, I don't do those things. And he's like, bullshit. And he like literally throws me over his shoulder. He's a tank and walks us across the street into the strip club. You know, in the times when you could do that, and they didn't care. And and I came out like 3 years later. So
Right? So many ones gone.
yeah, yes, I could have been a millionaire.
Right? Oh, man.
So, but yeah, so there's so many angles that you can take with the stories, and so that's like for me is just the heart of what I do now as ghostwriter. Like I want every veteran to write their story, whether it's for their family, whether it's for their business, whether it's whatever it's for, whether it's just to overcome their own PTSD and walk through some of their stress and get their story out there. Like it could be a 30-page book, it could be a 300-page book. It doesn't matter. It's just getting that out there, and then you decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah. That's exactly why I kind of started the podcast, to be honest with you. And that's the basis of what made me start my podcast was telling my story. And I was like, well, if no one really listens to it, at least I can have my kids kind of listen to it and they can kind of learn about me. And
Yeah.
before there's a point in time that I can't even remember the shit myself. I have a hard time remembering a lot now. So I mean, just ask my wife. That's why she's my calendar, she's my agenda, she's all of it. So
Yeah. So I just that's where I just kind of fell in love with helping vets
I love it.
and I'm a part of a couple veteran communities that are for entrepreneurs, which are amazing. You know, like like there's in the entrepreneurial space, there's the whole like mastermind groups that you have, right? Which are super like there's a place for them. And I don't ever want to discredit because there's absolute place for that kind of tribe and community. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of it in there is like, you know, 20, 30, $40,000 a year, you know, to invest into this group. So now you're paying for friends, you know, that are going to help you get to the $1 million
Yeah.
mark. It's like, I mean, if that's what your desire is, awesome, you know, but
Right.
you know, there's so many guys, especially veterans. And that's what I liked about this group. Is like this one group I'm in is an amazing mastermind. It's like $200 a year. I'm like, that's nothing, you know, and you know, it's $20 a month. Like I could spend more than that if I go to Starbucks in 2 trips, you know, and I have access to this tribe and community of like-minded people who, you know, spur me on, and I'm able to spur them on, and we kind of connect. I mean, you know, like you can run into somebody who's a veteran And
Yep.
you could be completely different service, completely different job, and you'll find something that you can connect with and talk about.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. I
so,
agree 100%.
yeah, and so that's where I really just kind of like have been landing. And so anytime I get a chance to just encourage people to write, that's what I want to do. So, and
No,
if you
and
can't
it
write, you can hire me and I'll write it for you.
right. No, I mean, it's very therapeutic. I know, I'm definitely, gonna have to put you in touch with a couple things and add you to my group and so you could kind of put this out there that you do this because there's a lot of people out there that may be interested in putting their story out there, but they can't do it themselves. Like I do know my buddy Donald, um, he actually wrote his book so that way he can give it to his kids. He really wants his kids to have it. Um, so there's a lot of people out there because I'm the same way. We want our kids to understand us, because maybe um, through the things that we've been through, we're a little bit harder. We're not as compassionate towards certain things, or uh, not the oh my gosh, kind of
Yeah.
people all the time, and that's not easy for everybody to understand that, right? So it's kind of nice to have an outlet or even a guide for other people to kind of look at it and say, because there's too many Vietnam veterans, World War veterans that had passed, and we never got to hear their stories.
Yeah.
These are stories that left our world, and you'll never hear about them ever.
Yep.
Because once those people die with that knowledge and those stories, it goes with them, and if they didn't leave a mark or they didn't leave it somewhere, there's nowhere for it to be seen. So I love that you're giving people that ability to leave their mark here. And then it goes it's not just that it's there for your kids, it's there for their kids. It's there
Yeah.
for their kids,
Yeah.
and so now we got history books about our own. How much would have loved to hear no more way. At least I know me. I love history. I love to learn about my family. I would have
Yeah.
loved to hear more about their stories and have something to read and pour my reading into that history is my own. So,
Yeah.
putting it out on something where they can actually pass it down, that's a really cool thing.
I didn't find out until after my grandfather died. Like, so at my grandparents' house, my grandpa had his army uniform, his dress greens or whatever they call them in the army. I don't know, but it's sitting up, like just hanging up behind the door for decades. Um, and and I would always look at that, and I knew my grandpa was in the army, and never really asked him questions about it. Even when I was in the Navy, I never even asked him questions about it. And then come to find out after he died, like when I was talking to him, like grabbed his uniform and there's the medical emblem on it. I'm like, wait a minute, Grandpa was a medic in the army? He was like, yeah, he was at D-Day. I'm like,
Wow. Oh
oh my
my god.
gosh. Like to
Yeah,
have had his stories,
right.
like like man, and
You could
and
have
so
written about it today, you could have
yeah,
just took it and written about it now that, you're a writer. You could have portrayed his story out there. I mean, just to have it,
100%.
that's gosh dang, man.
So that's where I'm like, man, we all have stories. Like it's and you don't have to be combat front lines. You could have a simple story like mine, but I was asked to speak on a podcast, and they wanted to talk about my transition story because it was so easy. And like everybody we talk to has crappy transition stories,
Right.
but
Yep.
you don't. Like, can you just walk us through what that looked like? And so that was kind of cool. Like, so we all have our stories to tell. Um, and one of them is not better than the other or worse than the other. It's just we're unique. We have our own perspective. And so that's like, yeah, that's my encouragement is like, write your story.
So many people sell themselves short, and think that they're insignificant,
Yeah.
because they didn't do this, they didn't do that. and I try to express even to like my wife, like she's, kind of going through like things. She's approaching 40 and she's just like, it's like getting to her now, like, oh my gosh, I'll be 40 in a month or two. And she's just like, I gotta do something. I gotta do something. Like, you've done stuff. You're a mother. You're raising kids. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much to your life that you're selling yourself very short. And I think that a lot of humans just do that in general. They go through life and we sit there and we praise other people all the time, like stars and stuff, but then we always sell ourselves short, um
Yep.
we don't cheer for ourselves. We don't invest in our own selves, but we love to invest and cheer on a lot of other folks. But sometimes you've got to be in it for yourself too, and you got to cheer for yourself and put yourself out there, because uh, you're not really any good to anybody else if you're insignificant to yourself.
Yep.
I guess I'm
100%. 100%. Which is why we didn't talk about this before, but with the ebook that I wrote, my one of the guys in the veteran group, he's like, you better sell this ebook. I was like, I'm just gonna give it away for free. He's like, no, sell it. He's like, you put effort into it, you have value, sell it. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, and he's a Navy SEAL, so I'm not gonna tell him no. He's like,
right.
I'm like, I'll fight you for it. No, I won't. Just kidding. And so yeah. And so I sell it on my website, but anybody,
So what's your website, bro? Let's spit out your website, man.
LeapleyEnterprises.com. But
Yeah.
but what I want to do here is, so if we throw in the show notes, like I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, like I spend most of my time probably on LinkedIn, but on any of those things, if you search my name, you see this lovely mug, and can find out who I am. But if on any of those platforms you find me, just shoot me a DM, and it says, because you have yours is Every Day is a Saturday podcast, and just DM me just like every day. It's all you got to do, because then I know that you've listened to this podcast. I'm going to send everybody, I'll free to send them the ebook. So, and when we're off, I'll send it to you too.
I appreciate that, brother.
I want like I got to make a living, but I'd rather not. I just want people to like read 20 pages and go, okay, I can do this, and
I love it, man. Yeah.
There's one page that says, if you can't do it, you should hire me. But other than that, it's all,
that's awesome, bro. And no, I want you to sell yourself though too, bro. What you're doing is amazing as well, and writing is rough, dude. You gotta know your grammar well. You gotta know when to put sentences. You need to know when the theirs and theirs is spelled right.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes into writing, bro. And I know you run into that like writer's block and stuff, or with the ghost. Yeah. So kind of run us through your whole, like, what inspires you, or what makes you end up getting and doing the books.
I like telling stories. Like I feel like there's, part of me, like when I was a kid, wanted to be a disc jockey. Like I grew up in the 80s where like disc jockeys basically own the airways. They could talk, they could say what they want, they could play what they want. It was before Clear Channel like made everything sound exactly the same, right? It's just, so there was this freedom that they had to tell stories, and there's, I think as we grow up, like we either want to be, doctors, firefighters, actors, or comics, right? Like if you break it down, like if we could be one of those four things, like bam, like that's it. And I have a pretty decent sense of humor, but honestly, as many stages that I have been on, I'm fearful of doing stand-up comedy, although I want to do it. That's one of my bucket list items, to like just do it.
Yeah, dude, you gotta go to one of those open mics, man.
Yeah,
where everybody's understanding that you're in there and you're doing it,
Yeah. And I got to remember, like, they're not up here on the stage doing it. So,
right, exactly.
I'm already a step ahead of them.
Well, now that we know that you're going to be doing it, brother, guess what? We'll be holding you accountable.
I know. But so so what was your question? What?
No, what inspires you to read? I mean, write, basically, in terms of what gets you kind of going and to sit down and actually write a book. Or
I love telling stories. I love reading books. I love listening to stories. I love being entertained. And so there's all those things can happen inside the confines of a book. And I think some years back, we had a car breakdown. And so I ended up having to take the bus to work for like 6 months. It was like an hour and a half there and back on a bus. And I hate, like, when I first started to do that, I just hated it. I was like, this is stupid. I'm like, I'm not a man. Like, I can't even afford a car. Like, I got to take the freaking bus. Like, this is stupid. And I'm like, well, I mean, I might as well take a book and try to read it while I was going there. And so during those 6 months, like, I would read a book pretty much almost every week, just in driving down or being on the bus to and from. So I read a lot of books in that time frame, and I just really like appreciated how books tell stories. And I think when you have a nonfiction book, like, I love fiction because it's fun. It's fun to escape and sometimes and listen to those stories. But for me, there's something about when you tell an actual story that actually happened. Whether it's a comedy story, whether it's a serious story, like there's something there like that you connect with. I feel like part of that is my Midwestern upbringing, because in the Midwest there's a huge, like, different than anywhere else, but kind of like a huge like family connection. It's different than in the South, where there's a heck of a family traditions that are there, but there's just this, like,
a lot of history and stuff.
Yeah. But there's just like this connection that happens, when you read a book, and you're like, and you can identify with somebody, and their story, and it hits you different than me even watching or listening to something. Like, I love that too. I find myself listening to a lot of podcasts, which is amazing, and but to read it, and just kind of have your hands on something tangible, it's just really cool. And I love writing. So
yeah, and I guess it's hard too, bro. Like, you're up against a lot of, like, audio books now. People who don't really like to read anymore, those kind of things. So I mean, I guess it makes it kind of odd, hard sometimes. But the easier part about it is that these people are usually have a great story, and there's someone out there that is interested in their story. So I guess that probably makes that part easier when it is more of an actual real story versus, just, some fairy tale thing. And it's really hard to get people to get into that kind of stuff, so to speak. But there's a lot of people that are history buffs, that like to hear stories. And I think, the most important part about it is capturing the stories and having them be there forever. That's the big thing, and that's what I appreciate with it the most, I think, about books and people that sit down and write. And there's a whole, it's a talent, man. I mean, it just like anything else, like being an artist, being whatever, being a writer, it is a talent, and it's not easy. And I like kudos, man, for sure.
I do get writer's block every once in a while, and so I usually have to, when that happens, I got to take a day off and just go do something else, which luckily, being on the farm, there's always something to be done here. There's always a cow to be milked or a goat to be cleaned.
Now, when, like, sometimes you'll be out doing something, does things come to your mind, and then you're like, oh shit, try to go jot it down real quick so you don't lose that thought? Or are you pretty good at, like, keeping things on file, so to speak?
I'm still pretty decent with keeping things on file, although I'm known to have, like, some kind of notebook in my back pocket and a pen on me at all times. So I'll write down thoughts and ideas as they come to me. So
Nice.
and
So
that for me
what do
helps.
what do you got going on, man? I mean, what's the future in store for you? What is your, you know, ultimate end goal? I mean, obviously you're going to be a stand-up comic at some point in time. You know, he did say that. So, but what else are we, you know, do you got goals and what's your aspiration in terms of the future?
For me, my ultimate goal is to just write a bunch of books myself and speak it and you know kind of I it's it's funny, we always hate talking about ourselves, don't we? Um
Right.
you can't ask me that,
You're right
man.
about everybody else's stuff, but then it comes to you, bro. You're like, man, I'm not even done with chapter 1 yet.
Like, I just want to I
You
just want
get
to
the
sit in a
preface
rocking
done yet.
chair and drink a beer. That's all I want to do. Excuse me. Um, I think ultimately for me, my goal is just to write books myself and find an audience that can fall in love with what I have to say, and so that's kind of my goal, and take that on the road and just help inspire other people. My personal mission statement is to inspire belief, build relationships, and better the world. And so,
Love it.
uh, in that, like whatever that looks like, I don't necessarily care what that looks like, as long as I feel like I'm doing that. And and then I like the ghostwriting just because it gives me that flexibility, and because I'm writing for somebody else, and it gives me the flexibility to be home with my kids and to spend more time with my family, and that's really my older 3 kids. I mean, I was gone all the time, and
Yeah.
so my younger 4, like my oldest is 27 and my youngest is 3. So I still got another
What a spread.
15 years. Yes. So I got another 15 years. And and so I it's funny when you say like the younger kids are spoiled more so, and the older siblings have an issue with that. And I think there's some good stories in there too. But I feel like what happens is the more kids that you have, you as a parent, you begin to see like what's more important. Not
Yeah.
that's more, like not that making money and having a steady job and providing for your family isn't important, because it is, but how we look at that, when you're 25, you just want to be a millionaire. When you're 55, you just want a day off, right?
Yeah. No, it's legit.
And so
And it is huge though, you know, because that is a problem with a lot of what we go through in our 20s is we're so focused on everything outside that we're not even focusing on the inside. So, you know, I wasn't really a good dad to my first 2 older children because I was trying to do everything, bro. I got out
yeah,
of the Marines and I'm just like, I need to work. I tried to play semi-pro football, try to coach. You know, I was just like, bring it on. I missed out on all this shit. Oh shit, I have kids, you know, like,
yeah,
and then you're just trying to make it all work. And then, you know, now that I'm up in my 40s and stuff, and I have a 6-year-old, so my daughter, my oldest, she's 19 in college, you know, and my youngest is 6, and then we got a whole bunch in between. But same thing, kind of the whole you guys spoil him. Hey, you guys, don't you want it different for him? You know what I mean? Like if you didn't
yeah,
like what was going on, don't you think it's good for him? And that's, you know, kind of the way I kind of put it on him too. Like, hey, obviously when I was younger, my focus was different. And I, you know, now that I'm 100% unemployable, um, I've been able to stay home and be a dad to this dude and not be so like I got a job that's got my mind for 12 hours, then you get off, and then you're so tired you don't got enough energy for anybody else. You
yeah,
know, that's kind of what I was going through when I was, you know, being trying to do all that stuff. But now that I've had more time and everything else, I mean, he probably loves it and doesn't like it because dad's more like hey, what are you doing type I'm there to I can't miss as much shit because I am here now,
Yeah.
but it's a different world, bro. It's just a different world,
Yeah.
and you're right. Your focus changes from the time that you're in your 20s, and then when you get up into your 40s and 50s, the focus starts to change, and things that were important to you aren't as important because you start to realize what's
Yep.
really important at the end of the day.
Yep. 100%.
So, but yeah, man, I'm glad you came on, and I really appreciate you taking the time and telling your story with all of us. Is there any last, I forgot anything you would like to tell anybody out there that's listening?
Just figure out how to tell your story, and just spend some time contemplating what kind of story you want to tell. If it's a personal story, professional story, especially as a veteran, like just because you weren't in the mix doesn't mean you don't have a story, and just because you were in the mix doesn't mean that you don't have a story because other people had it worse than you. You don't have to be combat trauma, although we all have combat trauma, but to some degree. But you don't have to have had days in the hole, so to speak, of nothing, to have a story. So I think just contemplating that and is the thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And to caveat on that just a little bit, you never know who can learn from your story or could take something away from your story.
100%.
And if we don't talk about it, no one's gonna know about it. And so that's I agree with you 100%, bro, because there's so many things that I've had to talk about that weren't very comfortably to talk about, but I think someone can learn from it, right? And I think that's the goal is out there when you're telling the story is that hopefully someone doesn't make those same mistakes or can and maybe have a little thing in their toolbox to help them weather the storm.
Yep.
So to speak. But hey, brother, once again, I appreciate your time, appreciate your service to the country. I appreciate what you're still out there doing for us. And let's keep it in touch and join join my Facebook group, all that, and post on there and let everybody know, hey man, I'll write your story for you and all that stuff, and we'll get some people's stories out there. Because trust me, if you go through all 60 something of my guests, there's some amazing stories out there.
I bet.
I assure you. So
I bet.
But
right,
once again, brother, we appreciate you. If you could just hold tight, and I'll be back there, and we'll make sure we got the recording all good.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, brother. All right, friends and fam. Well, you know what? That wraps up another great interview, another great, stories, and there's lots to learn. Like I said, telling your story is very important. I think it's important for each and every one of us. We all have stories, whether you think it's an insignificant story or a great story. Someone out there can definitely learn from you. Make sure you guys are all out there making the best out of your day. You know what I say. Don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time, see y'all. Have a good one.